Hello, this is Let's Talk About Myths, baby, and I am your host, Liv, here with a fresh conversation episode. I'm a little annoyed because I did already record the introduction to this and then lost it, and I don't fully remember what I said, so you're going to have to bear with me and also listen to my not as great microphone just for a quick moment. But I'm so excited for you all to hear this episode. It was recorded a month or two back now, but this is a guest that I have had on my to contact list for so long. She came by recommendation of fan favorite guest Joel Christensen. Her name is Andromache Karanika. If you can believe it, she is Greek and American. And oh my God, I came to her via a book that I have been just in the beginnings of reading and have been totally obsessed by. It's called Voices at Work, and essentially she did an enormous amount of academic study into women's voices, but specifically working women and just women with vocations, the work songs, and, you know, the weaving of it all. And so we talked about ancient women and their work, their vocations, their skills, and the way that they went about them, including these songs. But generally, Andromache is doing incredible work on real ancient women and their stories. And I already know I'm going to want to talk to her about everything ever because Anyway, I'm going to stop with this introduction because I am too excited for you all to hear this episode. We had such an incredible time, and it is just another one of these moments where I might not be able to do the scripted episodes so much right now, but I am so thrilled to have these conversations, to have these guests, and specifically to have women working in this field to bring us the real ancient women, because more and more every day I am utterly obsessed with them, and I just want to give them the whole world. So here is a moment of that. Conversations, the voices of real women at real work in ancient Greece, with Dr. Andromache Karanika. I'm so excited for this conversation. I admit I've only in the first couple chapters of your book, because I find I'm just taking so many notes and then having so many ideas. I've been working on some fiction myself, which is what it's been really inspiring, but also
wonderful.
Yes. Yeah. It's just, I couldn't stop. I kept thinking, oh my God, I have so many questions, and then immediately had to get you on this podcast. So I'm really excited. But I mean, I know, your work this is an older book that I've discovered. But generally, I would love to hear kind of what your, I guess, main topic of interest when it comes to women, or what your research has been primarily in. You know, I'm reading this work songs book, but what kind of work have you done with ancient women broadly?
Well, first of all, thanks
for having me. Sorry,
thanks for having me on your show.
I'm so
excited. This is really wonderful for me, because it also gives me the opportunity to think back of, you know, what I did more than a decade ago, and what I'm doing now and where I'm heading. But essentially, my interest on women was started because, I grew up in Greece. I was lucky that as a little girl, I had great exposure to sort of rural life, village life, really.
Can I ask where you're from? Sorry, I meant to ask that earlier.
I'm a Thessalian. I'm from
you are.
Thessaly.
Yes.
I come from the very middle. I'm not a witch.
but you could be from there. So.
Well, I can do some coffee reading on the side, and I'm told that I'm really good at it. My kids are scared about it.
I love
I
that.
have some great stories about that. But no, I come from Thessaly, from a town. I mean, not very small. It's called Volos. So it's on the coast. It's like the ancient Iolcus and the Jason and the Argonauts sort of story around that. But my family comes from central Thessaly, from central Greece. So on the west part, and it's a mountainous area. So I think a lot of the things that I experienced as a young girl just watching there, and we can talk more about that, have really influenced me in how I look at ancient literature. And essentially my goal was to find what is not there, the invisible voices, the silence there, and there's so much. I mean, obviously there's the weaving, and of course we can talk about that, but I'm lucky that I had a grandmother to whose memory this book is dedicated, who was a fabulous weaver. I've got some of her stuff in my home in California. And it's just so moving. It became, this is obviously not a personal sort of project, but it's kind of interesting how what we experience as children can shape your intellectual life, and like nothing goes to waste. So my grandmother died many years ago, many decades ago, but her things are there, and I have this memory of her singing at her loom. So when I first went to graduate school and started looking at what I wanted to do, I had this laundry list of trying to find out women's voices, like actual voices. In a way, I was trying to cross the bridge and go from the mythologized version into the actual, which is not easy. And, of course, with the positivist approach that especially older generation of scholars had, it's not even doable. Like, you cannot do anthropology. But then if you have an anthropological approach and you read our sources with a greater sensitivity, then it's this world that unfolds. It's like, oh my God, there's so much there that the text is telling us if we're willing to read it in the right way. And so so of course there's the weaving, and we'll talk about that a lot, but there's so much. I mean, there's the washing and washing the clothes, what that sort of this was a huge part for women's lives in the ancient world. And then there's lullabies, and there's, what you sing to your child to, fall asleep. And I mean, and even children's songs, which actually echo all of these genres. So we have a treasure that I felt we had not paid enough attention to. So I think with my Voices at Work, I really set out to just do that and see both at what is there, both at how ancient literature, and especially epic and lyric, of course, but especially epic, how like the grand literature that we know, that we admire, has been shaped at its very basic molecule from actual women's voices. So,
okay. I mean, I'm obsessed with all of this. This podcast has been going on for quite a while now, 8 years actually. And, at the beginning, I really set out to my point was kind of to look at how women are treated in the myth, because it tends to be that the stuff we have is just, it just kind of it makes women into these like objects to be sort of used, and you rarely get any kind of interiority. And one of the things that's just grown over time, particularly as I have conversations with people like you, is the utter obsession with everything that we know that we don't know about women, right? Because, I mean, as you're saying here, like all of these things being shaped and formed by women's voices, and yet those voices are absent from, at the very, you know, least, the mainstream idea of what we get from ancient Greece. So specifically, it's and I find, particularly as somebody like I have a degree that's quite old now, but I never went beyond my BA, except for now in this work where I've gone well beyond. But something that I get from people coming from the outside the academia, is just this idea that, like, because we don't have this kind of evidence from women, these voices, these, you know, the actual real lived experiences from them at all, it's this idea that it's like they didn't live, almost, like, obviously not literally, but it's just this idea that, like, women sort of didn't matter because those things didn't survive. And then, of course, you break down into the work that we know that women did, like you've said, you know, all these weaving and making clothes, making everything, but making all of these things that are biodegradable, and therefore we don't have today. And I don't know, this is just sort of me forming this, like, epic thought based on everything you've said, because it drives me wild. And so I'm so obsessed, I guess, with work like yours, where we can try to pick out these things that are so otherwise lost. How do you go about, like, finding those voices, you know, from something like, I'm, for context, have been living inside of the Odyssey right now. I'm actually working on a children's book that's going to come out next year. And so
wonderful.
It's very exciting, and hopefully going to be a good representation for kids. But one of the things I, you know, find over and over again is this, like, the real emphasis that the Odyssey has on these women, and yet at the same time, you know, I think the Odyssey is a good example of women being actually quite present compared to so many other things from the ancient world, and yet still we have these kind of mostly silent women, or, you know, sorry, now I'm just rambling because I'm just so excited, but they're always weaving too. And so while we don't necessarily get much of, like, these interior lives, almost every woman we see in the Odyssey is weaving. And I think that, I mean, that just sort of, again,
right.
Yeah, take it away from my rambles, because I'm so
no,
excited.
No, this is perfect, because I can continue with my rambling. But I mean, it's not just that they're weaving, but they're also singing. And we have, like, in two moments, we have the representation of Calypso in book 5. And then we also have, of course, Circe, two kind of, divine figures. And for both of them, we have the exact same line introducing their presence in the Odyssey, that she was weaving with and singing with a beautiful voice.
Wow.
And of course, we don't have any remains of what they were weaving. I mean, I just loved that Emily Hauser on your episodes gave all that. I mean, it was a new angle that I had never thought of before. That, you know, what if, you know, maybe Calypso was weaving the sails for Odysseus, and it certainly took a lot of time, you know, for her to do that. But then we also have Circe, and they're both singing. So it's not just the weaving, but it's also that they're doing something with the singing. So I think what I try to do is to look deeper into what they were singing, and how much of this is actually present. And because this is diachronically, like, I mean, this is the way people do, like, in every culture, not just ancient Greece. When there's all this, and I think there's other people who have done incredibly important work, like Professor Tack from Massachusetts, you know, that these, and also anthropologically informed, that when you sing, you're not just singing, you know, there isn't just the ritual part that you're kind of making the work just go faster, but it could also give you some kind of indication what kind of pattern you're doing. Like, you know, the rhythm with which you're singing, it also translates into patterns. So it helps memory in so many ways. And that's why, well, it's not just you, you know, or me who are obsessed with the weaving, but it's also Homer was obsessed with it. I mean, because Homer is a weaver of verses. He, you know, he, you know, they put all the verses around this sort of weaving metaphor. They're crafting it.
Yeah.
And the same with words. I mean, they can be crafted, and just like Penelope is weaving, it can be dissolved. So there's, I mean, such a rich sort of activity, such a rich metaphor, but it's also such a rich thing to do, because it really informs of how and what you're going to portray. Very much like when you're writing, I'm sure your children's, a beautiful book, it's going in its ways, and after a point it guides you and has its rhythm, and there's times you go faster, at times you go slower, some verses and likewise some lines, or some, anything you do, some parts of it can be harder. We can't have the same pace in our work. We're not robots. Humans have never been and will never be robots. So there's a pace to that. So the singing kind of is part of this pacing. And I think Homer is deeply, deeply aware of that. And that's why he stages it. And another thing that I kept sort of insisting in my earlier work, and it was kind of a revelation to me, if you look at both the Iliad and the Odyssey, every time that we have a woman, a female character speaking, there's reference to some kind of work that she's been doing before.
Yes, that's.
I was at first I thought, oh, it can't be true. I can't be this. I mean, and when I went again and again and again, when you look at how sort of speech is created, well, then there's some kind of reference to things that, and this is true for mortal characters. I think divine characters are a different story, but for mortal characters, it's kind of always the case. But very interestingly, it's not just for elite characters, not just for the heroines, but it's also for people who, who work at the palace, like slaves even. And my favorite example, to go a little bit away from weaving, of that is in Odyssey 20, when we have a slave old woman who's fed up with the suitors. I mean, can you imagine these women? They had to. I mean, this is an older woman. She had to witness the whole sort of corruption situation going on from her perspective. And I mean, who knows, the kind of abuse these, they had to work like constantly to feed them, to provide for them, to so this woman is grinding. And grinding is another sort of very special metaphor, and also very, very important work, because you need your bread first of all, right? So while she's doing her work, she's writing, she's uttering a prayer, and this prayer is essentially a curse for the suitors. It's like, may this be their last day, Zeus father. And the Odyssey records that. This is not Penelope, this is not Helen, this is not like an elite woman, but her voice is recorded. And of course, once again, it is before that it's staged. I mean, performers are staged, and she is staged as a working woman. So there's something in there. I mean, I didn't go too much the sort of feminist route, because it felt at the time it was obvious or self-evident, but maybe now it's not as obvious, and we need to stress it again. But there's an empowerment mechanism that comes out of your work. It gets back into your identity, and that makes that, when you're doing something, well, that gives you power to actually utter some words of authority. So interestingly also, that there is the word myth, and this is a word and this is what Richard Martin's wonderful work has shown, is not just a myth, but it's an utterance, something you say with authority. And authority is given not just to heroes and heroines, but also to all slave women, like this unnamed slave woman in the palace of Odysseus.
Yeah, that scene is so impactful. Having very recently read it a number of times. And I did also, I noticed Emily Wilson brings that up in her translation, both in the introduction and in the notes, and really goes into that. And it was really, a very interesting piece to have kind of really stand out when I was rereading it this time, because it is such an impactful scene when this woman is grinding that wheat and then saying these, making this sort of curse about Odysseus, and meanwhile he's overhearing it, and it's really amps up the drama in that scene in this way that is so impactful, because she is this unnamed slave woman, and that's, we have named slave women who could be involved too, but she's very specifically just like one that he overhears. And so interesting that
and it's, he overhears, he rejoices, he's happy to, because obviously, but also there's also an interesting reference that what he overheard to him was a kledoni. It was a kind of almost a prophetic sort of utterance. It had a very special ritual power. So this ritual power that comes out of female work is also embraced by Homer, and in different parts of the Homeric sort of corpus, but and not only in Homer. We see sort of references to grinding in the lyric corpus, in the Carmina Popularia. It's like there's even in the magical papyri. And so I try to kind of put all these different disparate sort of pieces of evidence. And of course, they may be centuries apart, but just the resonance is so similar. And the fact that, what you say can become, a prayer becomes a curse. Curse can be a prophecy for somebody else. It also shows how speech itself is so susceptible to transformation, because it's you can read it in so many nuances. And I think our work as scholars or creative writers is precisely that, to bring all this nuance that is really enriching our human world.
Oh, there's just it's so, I always wish we had more answers about women, I guess. I'm trying to think of like what I want to pick your brain on, but I also just always rely on like, there's just so little like direct evidence, I guess. But mostly I'm just curious, this is sort of going beyond the singing aspect. Do you know of references that we might have to like any kind of specific weaving? Like I'm curious if we really ever have any kind of evidence of what these women might have been creating more. Like obviously we know broadly, that's why people were wearing clothes and all of that. But I would just, I think of like Arachne's tapestry in Ovid's Metamorphoses, and I just have such a deep desire for like any kind of specifics about what real women might have been creating in their weaving. Do we know anything?
Right. We have very scanty references, and they, of course, in poetry they tend to be mythologized, but they're very indicative. I guess my starting point would be the famous scene of Iliad 3, where we have Helen weaving, and this is not the time when she's talking, not yet. She will talk eventually, but Helen is inside the Trojan palace, and what she's doing there, she's weaving a big tableau, and it's a great purple web of double fold on which she was embroidering, and then the text is very specific. She was embroidering the battles of the house taming Trojans and the bronze-clad Achaeans. So she's weaving a huge tapestry, in other words, of the war that is going outside the walls of Troy. And these lines are kind of so interesting to me because, first of all, she's witnessing the war, so she's recording it. So, this is, of course, again, it's obviously mythologized, it's obviously crystallized, but my question to this would be, if you were a painter, what would you choose to depict in your painting? And this is how Helen functions. She's like a painter of the of what is happening. She's recording what is happening, but she's recording that through her weaving. So so that gives us a little bit of a glimpse that it's very possible that what they were experiencing, I mean, of course, this is Helen, they're putting it out there. So they're creating a mythical sort of scene. But the other thing that is, it's the question of time that we touched upon a bit earlier. I mean, the war was going on for 10 years. She's creating the instant that everybody will see. That's it. And I'm actually very interested about the fact that, it's the war between the Trojans and the Achaeans. The Trojans are sort of mentioned first. I don't know if that means anything, and I never wrote about it, but it kind of, is she identifying as a Trojan? I mean, she's in the middle. She's a kind of a liminal figure to begin with. But she chooses to give, I mean, what people will remember is not the 10-year war, but it will remember, the tableau that she's creating, the tapestry that she's creating. And if you think, like, we have a moment of how museums are made. I mean, you go to a museum today, and you see from different eras, just paintings sort of trying to portray certain moments of glory or things that they want to memorialize. And that's exactly how Helen is behaving in the Iliad. She's memorializing something that she has essentially started, even though unconsciously. She's been part of this war, so she's portraying that. So that's my first answer to your question. But I think we can look for more clues in archaeology. I mean, there's this beautiful, beautiful painting of, it's a Cusi, it's a skiphos, like a, a smaller sort of cup-like vase. And we have Telemachus and Penelope, and Penelope, it's very interesting because Penelope is always like weaving and unweaving. So we have this half thing, and it's griffons, right? Yeah. So we have this mythical kind of creature that she's weaving. So, I mean, this is, if I remember correctly, a 4th century sort of vase. It's a red figured vase. So it gives us a very good glimpse of what could possibly be on an actual woven tableau. Yeah. And I think vases, ancient vases, should give us more, a better understanding, because what went on for the sort of more public, sort of, ornamental, sort of what went on in these vases, it does relate to what was going on the weaving. And then, of course, we have other references, like, there's this beautiful work with Andromache. Okay, I have to use at some point my own name there. That she was embroidering like Throna, and I'm not going to get into the scholarly debates about this word, but it could be like a rosette, could be like a flowers, sort of flowery motifs. And flowery motifs tend to be more associated with like weddings or, again, there's the ritual aspect. If you're weaving for a ritual sort of purpose, like, for example, Penelope claimed that she was weaving the shroud for her father-in-law. I mean, what would this shroud look like? Would it have any patterns? I mean, would it be like a blank sort of, a certain color or something? We can't tell. Or would it have some kind of, flowers or something, motifs that kind of point to the underworld in a way, if it is a shroud. I mean, I would think, as we know Homer to do, you're creating something beautiful. So it would have to be a work of art. And in her case, it had to be complex, or complicated in a way. So, I mean, both complex, but also complicated in how, because it's part of the whole, I mean, it's for a very, very complicated man after all, or the father of the very complicated man in this case, to use again, Emily Wilson's beautiful translation. So, and she's also using this as a time device, sort of, she's using this as her way to delay, things that she doesn't want to happen. So it's, I mean, time is also an interesting, I mean, weaving plays with time.
Yeah. Well, and if you think too, because this is exactly what I want to know is like what patterns, what visuals, because it's so clear that there is this ability or this drive to create these, like you're saying, like really complex and complicated and just these beautiful pieces.
Right.
And I just like, I want to know the details, especially given we have that
right.
Helen making something we have some detail there, or I think about the alternative, which is like when Hephaestus forges a shield, we're going to get all of the details humanly possible,
right.
They're usually not actually possible to be on one piece of armor, necessarily, but we don't have these details about women.
They could be on a tableau, on a woven tableau,
exactly. Right? Yeah, like I think so much of what we are told is in this armor, specifically in the Iliad, but like elsewhere as well. But yeah, could very easily be on a tapestry, way more easily than it could be on a shield.
Right. I have another theory, actually, and it's not a theory that I put in the book that we're, but it's very much in my mind. I mean, if you think of the Homeric sort of verses, they're so ornamented, they're so beautiful, and we have all these similes and metaphors.
So many.
Too many. And they're actually difficult to understand. Like if you're a child sort of learning this, it's very difficult to understand.
I'm trying to put some into the kids' book because they're so iconic, but while making them understandable. I know, yeah.
That actually, you said the right word, iconic.
Yeah.
That's exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
I really think that a lot of the similes really give us glimpses into precisely the iconic world that actually people could see around them, that, and maybe as weaving patterns. So when you have, someone is like a lion, where do you see the lions? Okay, we have lions in certain vases, but we also have lions in, the sort of the weaving patterns, or like a bird. I mean, I explored this kind of theory of mine a little bit more in my other book on the wedding songs. But it's very interesting that a lot of the sort of wedding imagery, may have sort of references to like birds or sheeps, or, sort of things that kind of might be symbolic, like birds fly, sheeps leave. So there's all these departure points. So if you go, say, to the Benaki Museum, one of my favorite museums in Athens, which has a lot of like, modern Greek sort of tapestries, embroideries, and you look at sort of the like 19th century or 18th, 19th century sort of wedding sort of paraphernalia, like a pillow, like a wedding pillow. What would you do? So you see a lot of these patterns. So a lot of like shapes, birds, flowers. I mean, think of like the Homeric hymn to Demeter when Persephone is abducted. We have that famous scene. What was she doing at the moment when Hades snatched her? She was plucking flowers. So you have the flower. And then when she narrates, what happened to her mother, she gives a list of flowers. So I'm actually thinking, and in fact, I'm working on that right now for my next project, but these flowers could be patterns, could be parts of, weaving sort of patterns, or could be parts of, they could be, as you said, iconic. They could be little icons. They would be maybe on pillows, maybe on her beddings, on actual people's beddings. So there is a reason why a Homeric hymn or Homer, makes reference to these sort of these particular things. So it's not just the plants, but it's really, these would be part of things that people actually use. So can we prove it with like 100% certainty? Well, unfortunately, we can go back, to so many centuries. We have Byzantine material, we don't have ancient Greek per se. But I think I think it's a safe speculation, in my view, to think that these were the things that they were actually weaving.
Well, and it makes sense too, because if you think about the pottery that we have that survives, right? They loved a pattern, a meander, all of the acroteria that like appear on all of these pieces. Like there's such specific. I mean, I have you can't tell right now. I have a number of very iconic Greek patterns and things tattooed all over me because they are like, particularly from pottery and things, they become this like very iconic imagery. So it only makes sense that the weaving patterns would have the same or their own ideas. Yeah. One thing though,
or ivy, all of those different kind of plants.
Exactly. There's
sometimes vases are framed. They're like, oops, here it is. And then you have little ivy, little sort of leaves, all kinds of ways that an image is framed. And sometimes it is an image that, relates, like you have a Dionysus, and of course you got all the ivy around him, or grape leaves, or, the things that relate to the story. So,
well, and if now I'm thinking about like Apulian vases, and like, oh, I wonder if women over there tended, towards more intricate, embroidery and things too, to kind of go along with how intricately painted some of those pieces were, in Italy, or it's interesting to imagine how many opportunities they had for this type of like for creating these patterns, or what might have been super common. But then I've gone back to the Penelope, because we were talking about how time comes in with weaving, and how she was having to continually take it apart. And it makes me think like, well, what kind of pattern could you create that could be taken apart without them noticing? Like it would have to be some kind of more amorphous thing. Otherwise they would have been able to tell that she was like undoing it, and now I could think about that forever. But it had to have been something where it wouldn't be noticeable. Anyway.
You would think that otherwise it would have left its mark.
On somebody would have said like, oh, didn't you finish those griffins already? Why are they now half done?
Like, or there's no flower in there, or there's no, but it seems like a complete, well, first of all, to unweave is very easy. You just take it apart, you just take the thread, and then it dissolves really. So even if it was like a plain cloth, just like a certain color, the thread, and even that, it wouldn't exist in its new form. So we can't know. So maybe that vase, that shows us this little, mythical creature that she would weave, it's also trying to fill in that blank, and that is very important.
And I as soon as you said that Skyphos, I could picture it exactly, because it's come up a lot in my research for the book, and it is such a beautiful example of, just even a woman standing at a loom, that's so rare to show the detail.
And it actually reflects that line, because at some point Telemachus, who is so eager to start his own journey, and really the first 4 books of the Odyssey is about him. He goes and talks to his mother in such an authoritative way. He's kind of a mini Odysseus, is like, mother, you don't care about these things. Let us. So he creates this, you stay inside and tend to your works, tend to your women's works. So he's being this little young man who tells suddenly his mother what to do. I have to say, it's kind of annoying. And these are the exact same lines that Homer uses in the Iliad, in Iliad 6, when Hector talks to Andromache.
Really?
It's like, you go inside to your works. So we have this kind of synergy there, how a male talks down to a woman, and whether it be son to a mother or husband to wife. But we also have this sort of polarity between, the inside and the outside, like you stay inside and, we'll take care of the outside things. So it's fascinating to me, but because the Scyphus takes on that particular sort of, on these two lines. I mean, Penelope is sitting and Telemachus is standing. So he's got that kind of, taller thing. But what is interesting to me, especially, is that she's in the middle. So her weaving is interrupted. And that interrupted weaving is such a trope in ancient Greek thought. Not only for Penelope, because in her case, in that instance, I guess Telemachus interrupts her, but that's the way it is iconized on that vase. She completely undoes her. But then if you look at sort of inscriptional evidence of women who died prematurely, it is kind of commemorated as like, oh, your shuttle will not sing again. Your work have been interrupted. So there's this emphasis on interruption. Wow. And there's this very beautiful 2-line fragment from Sappho 102, where we have presumably a younger figure, maybe a little girl, and she says, "Sweet mother, Glucia Meter, I can no longer weave due to my love for a boy." So again, we have a moment of interruption. So interruption is marked throughout Greek literature, from Sappho to inscriptional evidence, and I think it has a kind of haunting element. So meaning that if something is interrupted, it will either be interrupted forever through death, and this is what the inscriptions tell us, or you're meant to return to that. So an interrupted thing is not something, you can just, something is meant to be finished. So there's a ritual element to that. Yeah. It's like interrupted task, interrupted life at the same time.
Yeah. Oh, that's so beautiful.
Penelope's Persephone, I was thinking, Penelope, of course, but Persephone is also interrupted. Like her life is interrupted. So there's something about the poetics of interruption, or the myth of interruption. And it's a registered moment. And this is either death or wedding, or both, like Persephone does, kind of in between the two.
I had to write down the inscription about the shuttle not singing anymore too, because that's just wow.
There's quite a bit of, actually it's a trope in several inscriptions.
Oh, it's beautiful and sad, and it's interesting just because I guess I'm not as good at remembering each distinct piece of the, loom weaving process, but shuttles are some of the things that do survive for us, right?
Right.
Shuttles and loom weights tends to be all we have.
Yes,
yeah. So how beautiful that it is like one of these very few elements that does survive today, that is memorialized in that way. It's
right, and they chose to memorialize, an actual woman's sort of presence on Earth by referring to what she did, and what she did was interrupted So it's deeply sad. It's also deeply moving,
Yeah.
but it's a kind of interesting that what she, let's say, the weaving may not have survived in all those centuries, unlike, let's say, vases or architecture or other things, but in a period of, maybe even a couple or even more centuries, they do survive. I mean, as I said in the very beginning, I have my grandmother's sort of handiwork at my home, so and I'll pass it to my kids, so this is very precious to me. I mean, it's kind of, every time, I'm in California, and every time there's, of course, we have the with all this climate change and all the sort of fires around us, I mean, they're a bitter reality. And there was one time that we were worried about that we had to be evacuated. So I actually have my bags, and in them I have the things, and I have like embroideries, and these are not things that I may have out on a day-to-day basis. My husband was kind of joking, like, is that what you want to take with you? I'm like, this is the thing that is irreplaceable, if our fire, if there's fire here, so it's, there's something that there's a race with time. And even if we are not likely to have, weavings from the 5th century BCE, they do survive our lifetime.
Yeah, and can be passed down,
and be passed on, and can be cherished. They become, in a way, museum pieces, in a way. So it is also entangled with the question of memory. Really, and what you pass, and a memory in a very direct way, not memory like from a very distant past, but a past that is very dear to you or has shaped you for whatever reason. So it's very direct.
Yeah.
And this is, I think, deeply also involved with what women do. I mean, it's things that they do with their hands, and they, just like with childcare, just with everything, all the housework, everything is very direct. It has an immediate effect on people's lives.
Yeah. Okay, I would love, there's so many things. I am really, really interested in how weaving was like a vocation for women, and I think the memorials, the things like that are a really good indicator for that. And just the ways that women had like a purpose outside of bearing babies is the thing that interests me most, like
right.
And it's one of those things that, again, because of, I mean, countless reasons, how things survive, generally the patriarchy, we have this idea that women just raised kids and that's it,
right.
And I think just what little I've been able to learn about weaving as this vocation, really, or just like as the pride that women clearly took in it, or many clearly took in it, I'm just so, like, I'm moved by that idea, but I'm also just so obsessed with learning more. And I'm imagining, again, that so much of this is stuff we have to like really pick apart because of everything. But do we have examples kind of in that vein of the spindle? I'm keep saying memorial, and I know that's not the right word, but do we have anything kind of like that, beyond I guess, or just more like that really shows that women were having this as like a vocation, as like a career, like a life's work, more than just, they were making the fabric for clothes or anything? Like, do we have much of that survives?
We do, and again, it's scanty references here and there, but always very, very telling. I mean, there are inscriptions that discuss kind of, as I said, women's weaving, and even kind of record what they did as sort of weavers, or, I mean, among other professions. But I'll go back to the mythologized version, because I think it really is very, very important. And I think I'll use the Odyssey example. So when Odysseus meets Nausicaa, and we can talk more about that episode because it's so rich.
Mm-hmm.
When he has arrived in at the island of the Phaeacians. He's completely naked. He has nothing. So basically, Nausicaa will have to clothe him, to present him. The whole sort of thing there
Want to
unfolds
marry
so
him?
beautifully. Yeah, exactly.
Kind of weird.
She has to tell him to guide him into the palace of her mother and father. She gives him very good instructions of how to do that. She tells him, my favorite moment is that she's worried about the Phaeacians' gossip. And she tells him, oh, and don't be too near me. We have to have certain distance because, what if they start saying, who is this stranger that she brings to that? So there's all this amazing anthropology of a small town unfolding. She's very aware of that. She's very astute. But she makes him wear things that her mother, the queen, did. And when he gets into the palace of the Phaeacians, the number one thing that our text marks is that Arete recognized, that's our key word there, recognized her own weaving on her. So this is a beautiful moment that kind of shows that there is, Arete is kind of in the background, a weaver with a vocation.
Yeah.
She's not just a queen, but it is this thing that she immediately notices and immediately connects her with him.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just fascinating how that we have like a social network, like a small social network being sort of formed. And the same thing happens later on when Helen, also in the Odyssey, when Telemachus visits Helen, she gives him a gift, and it is a gift that is specifically marked as a mnema, so that's why you rightly use the word memorial there, kind of a little memory of my hands, like a memorabilia, let's say, of my hands. And she tells him, this is going to be for your wedding, but in the meantime, give it to your mother. So she creates, again, we have this social network of weavers, of women. Penelope, we know she's a weaver, but now Helen presents herself as a weaver, again, with a distinction, with a vocation, and she connects herself with the famous other weaver. So there's a lot, of course, that is happening because of that. But it's also a wedding gift that she there's no wedding. He's not getting married now, but she kind of gives it to him, but via his mother, whom she doesn't know or not at the time, at least.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating how it's not just something you do as a vocation, but something that will connect you with others in one way or the other. So there's the connection part, that because somebody else is going to wear it or have it in their house. So this is so beautifully presented in different parts of Homer, that it really shows the pride that people took. And in a way, this is almost, I think of Helen's gift to Telemachus via Penelope as a diplomatic gift. This is practices that are going on like today, right? You go from one place to the other, you send a gift, or there's so much. It's not just the weaving, it's the memory of her hands, the memory of her presence, but it's also connecting with somebody else.
Yeah.
So it is very, very intricate, and it creates an intimate connection. So the weaving, woven things travel, and this is actually really important. They have their own journey, and Helen does that when she discusses how she, the things around her, again in the Odyssey, were gifts from Egypt, from the wife of the king there. So there's again a social network of gifts, but these gifts are also very personalized. and they're given from one woman to the other. And they travel huge distances, and their tokens and their memorabilia and their stories. And so it's all at once. So they've got to be beautiful. They got to be, they tell their own story. They tell the story of, who made them, how it came to, to be in someone else's house, who wears them. And like, this case that I started with, Ariti, recognizes, and it's because she recognized her own weaving on him. She took a pity on him right away. So it is diplomacy in very subtle ways.
Yeah. What really stood out to me with the Ariti scene is also that he's instructed so directly to address her over the king.
Right,
that's what really stood out from Nausicaa to when I was rereading it, is just this way that she's like, go to see my mother. And I hadn't made that same connection with the clothing too. So I think that really just like adds so much more. It's like, she's kind of the one to decide, and her seeing you wearing clothes that she made is going to help that.
Right.
But also, you said some magic words. So I'm curious. Oh, I just realized the pun I made, and I didn't even mean to. But now I'm really curious because you mentioned Helen, and the gifts and everything, and that the gift of the robe is also so impactful because it really. Homer says so clearly that it's like the nicest thing she's ever made. Like, it's incredible. But also, like you said, she gets all these gifts from people all around, and in Egypt, and obviously one of the things that is so iconic for Helen in the Odyssey is that she's learned pharmaca, and that she can like make these potions kind of thing, medicinal,
right.
And obviously so does Circe. I almost said Kirke. It's hard to go.
Yeah.
It's
I do that all the time.
I bet. Yeah. I try to, because I've the more Greek I learn, the more I want to do it in a Greek accent, but then I confuse listeners. So I try to weigh it out here and there.
And a lot of people choose to print it as Kirke,
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's a funny, I love knowing kind of both, and I'm going to use them all. But obviously, that both of them have that skill. And obviously this is also something really connected with women, is that skill with herbs and medicines and things like that. Do you have you, I mean, I'm assuming they would also be singing songs while they do that, but beyond weaving, do you have much in the realm of women's work in that way too, of the stuff that we sometimes call magic?
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, Helen is literally like a pharmakeutria. And if we go later to sort of Hellenistic literature, if we go to Theocritus, again, he portrays in his idyls, in his sort of shorter poems, this kind of pharmakeutria, the women who make drugs, and of course these are like love potions. And love potions are very, you have to, I mean, the way ritual works for the ancient or even contemporary mind is kind of very interesting, because you have to do things the right way. You have to use the right ingredients, and you have to utter the right words. So when they're doing their love potions, there's obviously whatever they have to put in it, but you have to tell a certain line. I mean, bring this man to me. And I love it because there's a lot of imperatives. It shows that they're impatient. So Theocritus portrays that beautifully. It's like, oh, come on. And it's like he talks to, this kind of magical wheel. He turns, or she, the woman who utters, turns that little wheel and, so there's something that you have to do and you have to utter. So it's not just, it's action and word that have to go together, which in a way is very comparable to the weaving and singing that we started our conversation with. So Helen to go back to Helen in her story about how she learned all these things and how she uses her pharmaca and how she's, well, the pharmaca, interestingly, become a story. So, I mean, she tells these things. So it's part of her storytelling. And actually a story can be also a pharmacon, can be a little bit of a medicine, so to speak, or a drug. It can lull you, it can take you away. Again, this is Homer thinking about Homeric art. Just with the same thing with weaving. I mean, what we're doing with our creative work, we are trying to persuade, we're trying to create a new reality, we're trying to give comfort. There's all these aspects to it, and this is all beautifully recorded. And I think, again, magical papyri also take on that, and they also present the same kind of impetus of the human nature to sort of impose and control, in a way, the materials. And they do that. In order to do that, you have to kind of bring word and deed at the same time. So it really, ancient literature is magic.
It really is. It really is. Okay, now I'm connecting it with, we've talked about Emily Hauser. We've also talked about Emily Wilson, but in this case, Emily Hauser, and her new work, Mythica. But I'm curious if you've read her previous book, How Women Became Poets. Yes. Okay, because now all I can think about is the ways in which ancient Greek kind of prevented women from being ever on a tier with the poets, right? Without any kind of feminine use of that word. And even with Sappho, they,
Right.
kind of gave her a new name because they couldn't kind of conceptualize her in the same realm as these male poets. And it's just really interesting to hear the ways that pharmaca is, I mean, particularly when you're talking about, the words going along with the actions and things. There's so many cases where women are doing things that are objectively similar, to the poets, to the
Right.
singers, but we're not conceptualized in the same way. And I mean, obviously there's so many things going on there, but it's just really interesting to me. And I feel like I've also read, and this is where novel research, it might be mixing with my mind, but that, that is there an association with the word like singer, which is obviously also poet, like, but singers and pharmaca, and this kind of like magical, that, or I made it up, but I just think there's there's some connection there with women singing these kinds of songs related to pharmaca, or what we're told then. I think of love potions or love spells as such a good example of like the ways men often imagine women, how women spend their time, and it just makes me kind of wonder what else they were kind of singing about. This isn't forming into a real question, but like, have you thought about that connection, or like that lack of the word for a female poet in any way, and like how that kind of works along with the singing, with work songs, with all of it?
Right. Well, that's such actually a beautiful. It really takes me to the sirens.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It takes me to the sirens, and as kind of the earliest of, let's say, female poetic voices that Odysseus seeks to control. And again, it's in the realm of the supernatural, so to speak, that he really seeks to get the wisdom and then get their poetic sort of power, and then not only be a winner, because this is the kind of sort of hero he appears to be. He always, his eye is staged very, very effectively throughout the Odyssey, but also through that to have full control of the female poetic voice. And it is the same thing in a way that happens even later with, I'll dare say, with Plato. If you think of Socrates and Diotima, you have like a female voice as, in a way, the inspiration to what comes out as philosophical discourse. I mean, of course, with Socrates, there's all the midwife imagery, and I mean, he's supposed to be the son of a midwife. He practices midwifery, but a midwife is a kind of an intermediate, sort of somebody who brings someone to life, right? So he and as a philosopher, he does that. So I don't mean to get into the Platonic world now, but it's interesting that again, it's female work that conceptualizes this kind of power that the complete philosophical word will have. It is conceptualized as bringing it from somebody else. You know, it's like bringing a new being into the light of the world. So if Socrates sort of stages himself as a kind of a midwife, inspired by Diotima, as is the case in Plato's Symposium, well, this is similar to what, in a way, Odysseus is doing with the sirens, with really taking control of the narrative. And well, as you said in the beginning, we don't have really, you know, the direct sort of female authored. I mean, we only have fragments, bits and pieces, tiny fragments, but we have enough to know that there was a completely different view. My favorite is Sappho's take on the Trojan War. So in her fragment 44, she looks at the time, again, to look at time, before the Trojan War. And she looks at the time when Hector and Andromache got married. So we have this beautiful poem in which she portrays the wedding sort of procession of how Hector led Andromache to Troy. So it's a very different choice, very different to anything else that survives, because it looks before the Trojan War. It looks at a time when this couple was happy. It looks at a time when the Trojan community came all together in, you know, to celebrate. So it looks at celebration, very different compared to what we have later on in the Iliad, but it's still very Iliadic. So, you know,
I had to take notes. Sorry.
No, Sappho,
44.
Sappho is playing with that, but it's a very, very. So it's the feminine point of view must have been very, very different compared to what got, let's say, in especially the epic narrative. So my first goal when I started the Voices at Work, and I think I continued very much on this with my wedding book, and I'll continue that, is really to see how it is that these lost genres actually shaped the epic as we have it and the lyric as we have it. So I'll give just two very, very quick examples. When Odysseus meets Nausicaa, and we have all this masterminding of Athena, and she says, she kind of puts in her, Athena puts in her mind, in Nausicaa's mind, that she needs to go out. And Nausicaa behaves like a young girl. You know, she's like, Daddy, she goes to the king, can I please get a wagon? You know, because the clothes that we have in the palace are really dirty and they need to be washed. And, you know, I need to go out to the river. And, you know, she goes to the seashore with her maids. And so she prepares all that, and the stage is set for Odysseus. So these are moments when we have female action. And I love it with Nausicaa because we have girl action. It's, I mean, even the text kind of registered that she's not talking to her father in a solemn way. She calls him daddy, Papa. Please, Papa, can you please give me the one? So we have all this little sort of girl talk, with her father, which is kind of fascinating. And then when they wash the clothes, I mean, you cannot, of course, bring back to the palace wet clothes. They need to dry. So we have a beautiful scene, an anthropology scene in a way, kind of unfolding in front of our eyes. We have the women kind of waiting for the clothes to dry, and that can take, well, at least a day or more. And especially if you think, maybe these were like woolen clothes, that would take more time. So what do you do all the time when, this is a time without washers and dryers, right? So they play and they sing. And I tried to look into that scene because this is a scene where Homer genuinely gives us women and how they passed their time and what they did for a good part of their time. So washing the clothes might seem a little kind of, like dry activity, but well, it's not. It's something that people did for, and it was communal. It was very different. I mean, I was actually like it because I remember from my childhood that when women had to, in the village, when they had to clean their sort of winter clothes, the heavy clothes, they would go out to the river and, they would, of course, beat them and, it's to get all the dirt out. And then you let them dry. And this is like a 3-day celebration, 3-day gossip. It gives you really time, it's just, they're just by themselves. They don't have husbands, they don't have kids, or if they have kids, they're just running around. But it's really an anthropology that the introduction of washer and dryer, made us lose. So it was a communal act. It wasn't like a solitary thing, like I do my laundry at home. Very, very different. So Homer gives us glimpses of social sort of gatherings under the pretext of work, but in a very, very intricate way. So this is like one of my favorite examples. Now I forgot what my other example was that I was going to mention, but I remember.
Oh, great. Please.
Okay, so the other example that will take me a little bit back to weaving is, again, moment where we have the sort of female action kind of really registered, is children's songs. We have a very, very beautiful song, again, girls' song. So I'm thinking of Nausicaa, like the mythologized version, but then I'm thinking of, and this comes from many, many centuries later, from an author called Pollux, who wrote this kind of very weird dictionary. And in this dictionary, he talks about games, ancient games, and there's one particular game that he talks about, and this is the tortis. It's like torti, and this is a girl's game, and he gives it to us fully. So he gives it to us, and we have the lyrics. So and the lyrics is like, tortis, what are you doing? I am weaving Milesian thread. So, I mean, and it is a game, it's a girl's game. He clearly tells us, the girls go around, they, one is the tortoise, and then, jumps over the other. So it's again, this beautiful kind of tag game. And, we can think of many parallels, I guess, that we grew up with. But again, this little tag game refers to weaving. So this is now very different because we have like a young girl's game, kind of echoing the sort of elite sort of activity, the elite genre of, the weaving songs. Maybe somehow they got reduced into making this, little tag sort of game. Yeah.
This is just me with my weird tiny bit of modern Greek, but and ancient, I think. But tortoise is Helona, right?
Heloni, yeah.
Helona.
And it tells, and the song is Heli Heloni.
That's what I was picking, or
Yeah,
so I was like guessing.
Heli
That's
Heloni.
that's
What are you
lovely.
doing?
Yeah. Oh, that's really nice. Yeah, that's so interesting.
It's very playful.
Yeah. That's
It could have even, I mean, I'm not sure, but it could even refer to this Heli. I mean, if you think of like, how would they say catch me in ancient Greek? They would probably use like hele, like heleme, like catch me. So maybe that also refers to just as we were saying earlier, it's singing and doing at the same time. So this heli helone kind of refers also to the catch me. It's a kind of a catch me gate, and they're running around.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the London Bridge is falling down, or all of these children's songs that we children still sing, presumably.
Yeah.
So the connections are so many. I mean, you got like adult genres, adult activities translated into sort of children's activities, and it's part of this innocent kind of innocuous, I guess, kind of learning process. And we're just lucky to have a glimpse of that. And very interestingly, and that's actually the second example, so I'm going to make it my third almost, or part 2B, I guess. There is another poetess, Irina, and Irina wrote a dactylic hexameter, and it must have been longer, but we have about 300 verses. So it must have been we don't have 300. It must have been 300 verses. And the title is Distaff. So again, a reference to weaving.
Yeah.
It's a very, I mean, it's in a fragmentary condition, and we don't know exactly what was going on, but it's a dialogue between two girls. Some scholars believe that, it's a lament for a woman who died. Other scholars, myself included, believe that's more kind of a wedding lament or a wedding song kind of, but it's definitely a departure song. But anyway, we have a little bit like Sappho, where she remembers, like, oh, remember how we used to play. And she says, remember how we used to play? We used to play with our dolls, and we used to play with, we used to play with the tortoise. So she refers to the tortoise game.
Oh, wow.
And we have that, presumably Irina is, say, 4th, 3rd century BC, and we have it from like centuries later. So it's kind of like putting a puzzle together of different sources, that have the exact same sort of reference. And again, this is women's voices, like as authentic as we can have them. I mean, the Nausicaa part is staged within Homer, but I think it really, this kind of daddy, it really keeps like the authentic element of how a girl, it really is staged very beautiful. But then we go into the girls sort of little tag game, and Irina before that. So we have through centuries, we have sources that can talk to each other in a way.
Yeah. Oh, I'm really obsessed with all of this now. I've been like jotting down all my crazy person notes to look up later. I've read some Irina, but I need to go find that one. But this is sort of going back to a bit earlier, but sort of just pulls everything together. But just speaking of the mythologizing of it all, I just think this came out of my conversation ages ago now with Emily Hauser, but I think about the way the muses serve so many similar purposes mythologically, where they are the inspiration behind a poet, but they, as the women, are meant to be silent. They're meant to influence the man, but not do the same thing that he does, and it's just it's interesting to kind of, I mean, they're all such similar kind of roles and characters in that way, where you can kind of see it in the or earliest, that we have mythos of this idea that the women are behind the scenes, and
Right, right,
I think it even connects down to something as unintentional almost as just the way that women's work does biodegrade, in the
right.
time, and just these ways where they're just sort of unseen and behind the scenes. And I don't know. I mean, that's it. Just, I think, links up to so many different characters and examples. But I'm simultaneously so glad to hear that we have these examples of. I mean, the tortoise song is freaking adorable, and I'm going to think about that for a long time. But also, I mean, the fragmentary work that we do have of women, the fact that we can get these kinds of connections, that we can see that level of sort of reality or just real life, it's just so meaningful. I wish we had so much more of it, but it's so wonderful to have these glimpses of just like real people, like
Right.
specifically real women, but so much so real people. And I mean, even if it is just in the form of this staged Nausicaa and what she's doing, but like you said, like I mean, it is staged, but the Odyssey, more than I think anything else that survives, does contain so many little moments where you can see
Mm-hmm,
the real
mm-hmm,
world,
mm-hmm.
through these stories in ways that like the Iliad doesn't really have the chance in the same way. Like I'm sure there are those moments, but they're so hinged around this war and everything that
Right,
that
right.
impacts what we see, whereas in the Odyssey we get some glimpses of real women, and the fact that we can then kind of connect them down the line to the very real actions of real women, just
Right, right. Well, I'm so glad you mentioned the muses because
oh
I mean, they perplex me a lot.
yeah.
And I'm thinking about them a lot now for my next book
Mm,
project. I'm really interested in how the muses function as a chorus. They're like the nine muses, the nine daughters of Mnemosyne. And of course, that they
mm-hmm,
are the daughters of memory is very meaningful.
mm-hmm,
But how they also function as individuals. And you got like Sing to Me, Oh Muse, So we have, and the epic performer addressing Calliope, presumably. They also have their own stories. They have their own lives. They have children. I mean, Linos, and I talk about Linos in my Voices at Work, may have been in one of the versions the son of a muse.
mm,
Again, and Linos is also it's kind of a song of grape harvesting. So it's these very very interesting kind of genres of a type of song, but also heroes at the same time. And there's usually with some kind of sad stories, like a typically somebody who died prematurely, but that also reflects back on grape harvesting.
mm-hmm.
And of course, that's when you harvest, that's what you do. You take, something out of life in order to preserve life, so there's all kinds of interesting associations that have gone through the centuries. So the muses are just everywhere. They're in like the famous mythology. They're behind, they have a story of their own, but they are also very present in stories that are far lesser known
Hmm.
and are more directly, let's say, to sort of relevant to people's lives. So we have a reference to Linos, like the song Linos, on the artifact that you mentioned beautifully earlier, the Shield of Achilles.
Mm.
There is a young boy singing the Linos with his lyre. And
Hmm.
that young boy, to my mind, is a little bit like a kind of an Achilles figure who also sings with his formings at another moment in the Iliad. So there's interesting mirroring going on. But again, we have the reference to the Linos, just like that. It's kind of like a song, a grape harvesting song. It is a grape harvesting scene, and it's a very joyful scene on the Shield of Achilles. And Hephaestus, chooses to portray that very beautiful scene on this sort of wild, sort of shield that goes to depict everything from the universe, from the sky, from the stars, from cities at war, wedding scenes, and then also the grape harvesting scene. And of course we have a little reference to the Linos, Linos song. And Linos has a mythology there and may have been the son of a muse. So the muses have like all these stories that are sort of hidden through the centuries in sources stories that we don't even know about. But there's also a kind of a solemn presence of them in like the epic tradition. So I think more was going on with the muses. I mean, we know there must have been a kind of a cult of the muses. They're definitely seen as the creativity. It's also kind of astonishing to me that we don't talk about it more. I mean, there is a muse of astronomy. We're talking about hard science. And, as they are kind of crystallized more and more, from the archaic world down to the Hellenistic world, there's definitely a cult of the muses, but there's a need to talk about, let's say, the STEM part in the muses, the astronomy part. And that takes me back to some of the sort of less discussed. Actually, I didn't even discuss that in my earlier writings, but I often think of, we were talking about weaving earlier, but to do this weaving, we have a mathematical mind at work. To produce these patterns, these are elaborate sort of patterns to do. These are great mathematical minds that showed their sort of artistry and mathematical prowess in a hidden way. So this goes back to our conversation about what is hidden, what is not there. This is not an easy thing to do. And it's no wonder that people who have kind of inclination to sort of math and science, they be very good at sort of producing these, sort of crafts and arts in interesting ways. So, we don't talk about sort of the technicalities about it, that to produce the blouse I'm wearing, my mother was a seamstress, so very much. And I do think that there is a beautifully mathematical mind in, when you take a piece of cloth and you have to cut it and then sort of stitch it together, that is again mathematics in your hands. And, when you have to economize, or to go to other kinds of work, or just to do your household budget. This is also like budgeting, this involves a lot of economy. There's a reason we talk about economy in household, but, and women doing all the work there, but we don't talk about it because it kind of escapes our notice.
Yeah.
That you have accounting, you have, it's like how much, you can't just produce weaving for or embroider, in kind of infinitely. You are bound by your materials. You've got so much thread. It can make so long or so, it has to be, you have to do a lot of budgeting there. There's a lot of accounting that goes in there, and we don't talk about it. I regret to say that I did not talk about it in the book, but now I think it's more in my thinking.
Yeah. I've never thought of that side of it either, but it so immediately just, makes me think of it all comes down to the same larger issue, right? Which is this overall devaluing of what women do.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly,
yeah. And
exactly.
so we don't even conceptualize of the skill that goes in. Meanwhile, it is an incredible skill. And when I was 12, I took a sewing class and made a handful of things, and that'll enough was enough to know how difficult it is, and have such a admiration for the people who can do that stuff, especially coming up with a pattern, coming up with especially a pattern to weave into fabric, you're planning so many things ahead. And it's
and
really...
even if you have the cloth ready and then you have so much cloth. I mean, I remember when I would go to the store and my mother would need something, she said, well, buy like half a meter. I guess I would need it more, but I have to make it work. And then you have to put it's like a puzzle. You have to put it together in a way, but you also have to economize because, otherwise it would cost so much more. So all of that is things that are part of daily life that do affect like choices that were made. And it's the same with poetry, or it's the same with, how we write books, or when we do our creative work, you work within time parameters, within you have to do some budgeting. It's like, which story do I choose to put in? Which story do I put out? How many similes will I use? How many metaphors? How much of that? There is inherent budgeting. There's inherent mathematical value, behind the processes that I don't think we talk about.
No.
So this is the economy, like the economy of ancient world, just as, we talk about the economy of contemporary world.
Yeah. No, I've never thought about it that way. But as soon as you say it, I'm like, oh gosh, that's all I've been doing with this Odyssey. Is like the budgeting out of like
it is really a kind of what gets in, what gets out. Do I say this first? Do I say that later? I mean, it's creative, but it's also from a very practical perspective. For anything to become a story, there are practical considerations that are somewhere in the back of our mind, and we don't really voice them enough. I'm so excited that I'm having this conversation. It's because it's like, okay, how do I begin my next book? Do I say that? Do I that? So there's all this back and forth in the backs of our mind that goes into, and there's an economizing in a way.
Yes. No, I'm obsessed with this now. It's like, I mean, very specifically because the Odyssey I'm working on is for like 8-year-olds and older. And so, I'm squishing down what I'm trying to make basically the entirety of the story of the Odyssey in its original form. I'm trying to squish it down into this tiny word count that, tells the story appropriately without leaving out the important aspects and while making it friendly for kids. And it's, I've never thought about the math and the economy that's going involved. It makes me, even more proud of my work. So I appreciate you pointing that out too.
It should.
No, it's so interesting. Oh, well, okay. I could keep you forever, but I'm going to try to wrap up. I have one question about just continuing back to the muses really quick, because I had I do Q&As with listeners regularly, and somebody recently asked me a question about the muses, and I wasn't fully sure how to answer it because they pointed out very rightly and interestingly that, we have all these muses for all these forms of creativity, but what we don't have is a muse for like the practical arts, things like weaving for sure, but also even creating pottery and metallurgy, all of the art that Hephaestus does. Do you have any thoughts about why?
I think of that. That's a great question. And I think about it, and, like my easy but not satisfying answer is that ancient Greek thought had a little bit of the way these crafts were conceptualized as techne.
Yeah.
And somebody might say, and of course there's a whole sort of way of looking at this from, like, let's say the Platonic perspective, what is a technique, what counts as kind of superior. And I'm thinking back, and I'm not satisfied at all by that. I don't think that we have like a muse for weaving, because I don't think they because in a way poetry, and I'm thinking back of the term poiesis, is doing, and weaving is the same thing. It's also doing something. So I think that the muses really look there's the practical part is included in there. And the material aspect is included in there through these sort of greater poetic world, but poetic not in a narrow sense, but really in the sense of creativity, sort of more broadly defined. So yes, we do ascribe sort of Calliope as the beautiful, with a beautiful voice, I guess, Calliope, I mean, and there's of course conversations about that, but I think beyond that, I think poetry is more broadly conceived as something you make. And if we trace how a verb poieo, to do, to make, is used in Homer, I think this would give us really interesting results. And I know people have done it, that it's kind of the practical is part, it's embedded in this sort of grand sort of scheme of sort of poetry and beauty and all of that we kind of grew up with.
No, that makes sense. Yeah, it's, and that certainly makes sense, the way it would just sort of involve more. And also it also comes down to, this is something I tell my listeners, unfortunately, all of the time, it also comes down to like what we have and how we can interpret it, right? It's there's a lack of somebody writing out that this muse was associated with this, but if you're going with these bigger ideas, and certainly, I mean, sort of metalwork aside, it makes sense that no one recorded the immediate connections between women's work and the muses and made that direct connection.
But
for
when
us
the poet says, "Weave my thought," this already shows that this is how they're conceptualizing.
Yeah, like it's there without somebody overtly defining it.
Exactly. And of course, we have the whole sort of conversation of Athena as a weaver and as a patron of the arts in general. And Athena is also an Athena Ergane. I mean, the names, the different names for gods tell a lot. So an Athena Ergane, like a worker Athena, really speaks volumes to how the practical part is really embedded in that. And of course, Athena is also connected with metallurgy and shipbuilding and the Argo, everything. So the practical part, is really all there.
Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, I again could keep asking you questions forever, but I think this is so perfect and a good way of wrapping up on the muses and I could think about all of this forever. I'm so thrilled to have all of this new insight into just real people. That's the thing that I want so badly these days, just the real people back then.
Me too. And I think I'm glad to see that scholarship is doing that more and more.
Yeah. You've pushed me. I need to actually read Mythica fully. I've had Emily on the show now a handful of times, so I feel like I've gotten like lots out of it. But
yeah, I'm reading it right now. Reading Penelope's Bones. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Yeah. I do like the American name. Penelope's Bones is a very good name.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful title.
Yeah. And a great book. But no, and I'm so excited to read more of yours now that I've spoken to you about it too. I would love to. I mean, I want to know everything about what women did, and it's very frustratingly hard. So I'm thrilled that there are people like you doing this work. I hope you keep doing lots more.
And I'm also thrilled that you're pushing the creative part of it. This is really important. And what children grow up with really makes the discipline thrive. So please keep us in business.
Well, no. I mean, I am trying with this podcast, which is not for children, but now I'm delving into the children's side too. And yeah, I just think we need more of sharing stuff from the ancient world with a level of modern, I think, care for the content. Often it's like this...
I mean, I see it from our students here. They just love mythology. It's our bestseller. I think any campus in the United States, myth or ancient history, Greek or Roman, they're just like bestseller courses.
We're keeping each other in business.
So much to tell.
Yeah. Well, and then they come and find a podcast, which is great. And thankfully I've got lots of experts to share even more with them. So it's, oh my God, this is my favorite part of the job. It's just getting to pick minds like yours. So thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you. This was fabulous.
Oh, I'm so glad. Is there anything you want to share with the listeners about like reading more from you or anything you have coming up? It kind of sounds like maybe not, but if you do, I would love to hear it.
Well, I think a lot of the sort of continuation of my thought on beyond work, my wedding book, it's Wedding, Gender and Performance. It came out just last year.
Oh, great.
From Oxford University Press. And I have, it's in many ways kind of a better book.
Amazing. I'll get that one too.
I mean, it's also very rich, and it looks again how actual wedding songs shaped epic and lyric than what we have of them, and then moves into looking more at experience, and I'm looking more into emotions, which is something I did not do as much for the workbook. I'm now working on other projects. I'm actually fascinated by catalogs of women. And we have, of course, there's a catalog of women, like this Hesiodic text that we, have in hugely fragmentary form. But I think poets did something really interesting by putting women to, or not just women, but also putting catalogs together, but especially for women, on naming them. It's like to name or not to name. Yes. So there's things happening with that, and I'm exploring that right now. So it's to be continued.
Yeah. Well, I'm thrilled to hear that. It's funny. I actually have a draft open on my computer that has been in draft form for a year or two now, but it's my own attempt to write some kind of catalog of women, because I also become obsessed with that. And so I'm like, what could I do with a modern
so
form?
Much to play with.
Yes, exactly. I have to find that. But yeah.
But it's definitely a text that did not, Odysseus gave a catalog of women when he was talking to the Phaeacians, when he was speaking to the Phaeacians, and gave his Odyssey. But I think this is a text that definitely we missed looking at it the proper way in the past.
Really? Oh, that doesn't surprise me at all, and I want to know everything.
I think
I'm going to be keeping an eye.
It's a more collaborative text. It's a text in dialogue with others. So, and that's the reason why we have been missing. But anyway, I'm exploring that right now.
Well, if and when you have enough that you want to ever chat on another podcast episode about that,
happy to.
Oh, I would love that so much. So we'll stay in touch. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Liv, so much.
Oh. Thank you all so much for listening. That conversation was amazing. I kind of want to try to pronounce it up front, but I'm going to try to do it here instead. But I just want to try to say my incredible guest's name with my attempt at a Greek accent. So another huge thank you to Andromache Karanika. That wasn't as great. I'm usually better able to roll my R's, but here we are. Oh my God, I'm obsessed with that conversation. I'm obsessed with her book. I'm obsessed with finding her other book that she talked about, and then also in any kind of upcoming work. And I'm so grateful for guests like this. I love all of the guests that I talk to, but when I can look at these very real women of the ancient world, it is, for me, just honestly next level. So I hope you all liked it just as much. Let's Talk About Myths Baby is written and produced by me, Liv Albert. Michaela Pengoish is the Hermes to my Olympians, my incredible producer. The podcast is part of the Memory Collective Podcast Network, where things are ticking along, or will be very soon. And we're just so excited to bring more of the ancient world, especially right now, because things are terrible. So let's look back at the origins of patriarchy to see what got us into this mess, because spoilers, that's where all the problems come from. It's just one gender deciding that they're superior for no other reason other than, lack of bodily ability to create life. So they got to control the one that can. Anyway, I love this shit. I am Liv, and I love this shit. But what I love most is tearing down the patriarchy brick by brick while my hands get bloody